Hello humans and welcome to MIDI Instrument Diaries. My name is Richard Foskatter. I run MIDI Instruments. We make Kontakt instruments of various sorts. And this is part one of Instrument Diaries, and we're going to go through a very cool process of developing an entire instrument from scratch, all the way from recording. Unfortunately, I've actually recorded this instrument, so it will be from sample editing to GUI, to scripting, to final delivery, and the entire process we're going to go through in this series. I'm going to try and make it as clear as possible and as concise as possible, but yeah, let's jump in. So the instrument we're going to make is a handpan. So this is the handpan, and this is Janet, and this is Janet's handpan. She's awesome. This is not Janet, and neither are the rest of the people, but Janet's handpan found its way into my house. Janet runs a thing called Janet's Planet. She does yoga classes and retreats and sound healing and all sorts of stuff, and she's cool. And anyway, her handpan found her way into my home, and I decided that I was going to sample this instrument and make something cool from it. So that's where we're at. And yeah, so let's quickly jump into the session. I'm going to take you through the session in its entirety. We're going to do a quick setup and then start editing samples. So this is the session. It's a Cubase session. There's a very specific reason I work in Cubase, which I will show you a little bit later as we go. And I recorded 4 microphones here. I've got a microphone left, right, center, and room. So I'm going to just start by setting up the session for myself so that this is easy for me to work with. First thing, I'm going to just give these guys a color label just to make it easy to know what is what. And it's 2 in green, so that's my color label. Then what I want to do is put all these mics into a folder track. So this is going to be my folder track, and I'm going to just call this mics. I didn't put it in. So that's my folder track. There we go. I can close it up. And I'm going to just set this button here to enable. This is group editing. So I'm going to enable group editing. That just means that if I click anywhere here, it will edit everything as a group. So that's very key. We want that. Then I want to add 2 more tracks to this. Let's see if it will, here, marker track. I want 2 marker tracks, actually. So let me just add those. I'm going to call this first one Globals. And the next one I'm going to call Export. Cool. I'm going to pop them to the top here as well. And let's just color code them. I'll make that one yellow. I like colors. They help me out a lot. Okay, so that's essentially my setup here. Let's just make this a little bit smaller. So that's my front end setup here, and let's just go to the mix track here. The mix page, and I'm going to set something very specific up here. So we're going to select these 2 tracks, and I'm going to route them to a group track. And for the sake of it, I'm just going to make 3 of these. This is going to be stereo out. And let me just call this M1 add track. So I should have added a couple of tracks here. Yeah, okay. Great, whatever. Let me call this one M3. M2 and M1. There we go. And then I'm going to route these correctly. So these are the stereo tracks. I'm going to route them to M2. and then the center microphone to M1, and then the room mic to M3. So that's going to be my layout. So these now are my group tracks for the microphone 1, 2, and 3. Microphone 1 will be my center mono, mic 2 will be my stereo, and mic 3 will be my room. Okay, great. And this is where I'm going to be starting my edits over here. So let me just show you. So you'll hear quite a lot of noise there, quite a lot of hiss. These samples are very soft at the beginning at any rate. So I want to just deal with that up front very quickly for my editing process so that it's a little bit simpler. So I'm going to edit, I'm going to listen only to the center microphone while I'm editing. And on the center microphone, I'm going to add an RX denoise, spectral denoise, RX, and then I'll just denoise off this little hiss here at the front. So I'm going to learn, play through a little bit, stop. So that gives me quite a nice denoise there. That's great. And then I'm going to add a maximizer, not maxim, just to give me a little bit more volume here. There we go. We've got a little bit more volume. That might spike later, but at least I've got a bit of volume now. I'll adjust that as I need it. Cool. Okay, so that's my setup actually. That's pretty much my setup done and dusted. And let me save it. So let me explain what's going on here. I recorded these four microphone positions. I can't remember how many articulations I've got. I've obviously got hand. I can't remember if I used a mallet or if there was some other articulation. But I think there's 2 different articulations, maybe even 3. But we're going to start at the beginning here. And I've got a bunch of velocity layers that I'm dealing with here. I know that. I know I recorded at least 4 velocity layers and a bunch of round robins, 4 I think as well. So when I'm editing my samples, I'm just going to track these as I go. And yeah, let's dive in. Let's see what we've actually got going here for the first sample. So that's the next note. So was that I'm going to just take four round robins out of this. I know that that's what I was doing. I remember that much. Okay, so I'm actually ready to start editing my samples. So unfortunately, I made a little mistake during recording and I didn't record to click, so which complicates things a little bit, but it's not drastic. So I'm going to make sure that I've got my group editing engaged here. I'm going to double click on the track at the top and I'm going to remove all my hit points. So if I zoom out, you'll see these are all the hit points that are kind of automatically generated for the selected track. Let me just remove all of that. And now let me turn off the group editing because I actually want to create hit points only for this top track. Okay, so here we go. Okay, I've created some hit points, but it's all garbled. I don't really know what's going on. Let me zoom up my waveform a bit here so I can see what's going on. And these are all the samples here. These are going to be all the samples I'm going to cut. Now, it's all over the place. Normally what I'll do is I'll push the threshold up and you'll see these 2 bars here, these 2 threshold margins expand. But now the samples are just actually too soft for this thing to even register what's going on. I've also got intensity, so I can pull that up. And that's actually great. That's now reading all of these other samples here, which I wanted to read. So all of these samples are being read. There's one that it's missed, a couple of it's missed, and it's missed all of these here. That's totally fine. So what I'm going to do is zoom in to this point here, and I'm just going to manually add these hit points as I go. Zoom in a little bit more to just make it a bit tighter, as tight as possible to sample. All right, so we've got all the hit points here allocated. That looks good. Yep, that looks good. Those are all breaths and bits and pieces happening in between. So cool, those are my hit points. So I've now manually marked them. These are from the next selection. So let's just work with that initial selection there. Okay, so what am I actually doing? Actually, what I want to do is quantize the audio here so that it's clicking, at least it snaps to either the bar or the beat or whatever I can find. That's going to make things a bit easier for me going forward. So let's engage group editing, and we will then also click here. We're going to open the Quantize panel at this point. So we'll see here that it's prioritizing the hand pan left, which is this main track here. And then you'll see slice and offset and range here. So this offset, I will always set to -100. Basically what that's doing, it's pushing the place where it slices the sample, I think it's 100 milliseconds back from the hit point. This will just ensure that we're not slicing too early or too late. We've got a bit of play, basically. So let me slice these samples. So if I zoom in, you'll see that I've sliced them beautifully. And there you can see the hit point, the white hit point, and then that's the slice there. Okay, so now to quantize. And because we're not to bar, normally I would record to click, and then each sample would probably fall on the bar or the beat. And in this case, we can't quantize to beat because we're sort of all over the place. Let me just show you what happens if I do. So that's maybe quantizing to beat. If I quantize, then I start getting these hectic overlaps, and this is an overlap. They're kind of fine. They're not too serious, but I see that there's a few that are a bit more than I want to deal with. Like I don't want to deal with that as an overlap. So I am going to undo, and I'm going to quantize to 1/8. Not fantastically ideal, but totally fine, and I'll show you why I'm doing all of this in a second. Cool. So that's quantized nicely. I like that. We're not going to crossfade. We're not crossfading at all. So that is the deal. So here we have sample number 1. So if we click P, it just gives us locations in and out. And I'm going to put my first cycle marker in for export. Okay, let me line it up with the front of the sample, and let me cut off here what we don't need. So essentially, if I play this, this is my first sample over here. Cool, that's what it will be. Cool, so I've got my first export marker here. So let's label this, and to label it, we're going to need to know what note it is. So I've got a tuner. Let's see if it picks up this soft sample here. We're using M-tuner for this at the moment. Let's see if it picks this up. Wait, cool, D3. So this note is D3. So let's label this. I'm going to call this hand sus. You'll see I used a dash between that because this essentially is going to be the articulation label. I'm going to then underscore D3 underscore velocity layer 0 underscore RR0. So what does all of this mean? So when we bring the samples into Kontakt, there's there's different ways to do it. You can do it manually, one sample at a time or a bunch of samples at a time, and that's totally fine. Or you can also do it by script. So you can get a script to analyze your samples and then bring that in. And if you're working with a huge amount of samples, a script is massively helpful. In this case, we probably don't need it, but we're going to use it anyway because it's fun. So the articulation is hand sus. The script will then differentiate with the underscore. So I'm getting a bit technical now, but that's the reason why I've labeled it like this. So the underscore will differentiate all the different components of the sample label. So hand sus, articulation, D3 is the note, VL0 is the velocity layer 0, and round robin 0. You may think, why am I using VL0 and RR0 as opposed to VL1 or RR1? And the reason is kind of arbitrary. It's just that I've gotten used to it within Kontakt when you're coding. Actually, when you're coding in general, 0 is an entity in itself. So 0 will be the first place of something. So 0 is 1, essentially. But that's the reason I've done that. So here's our first sample. It's great. Now we can just copy this over to the next sample there, and the next sample there, and the next sample here. And then let's play them quickly. What's this? So there's four samples there, 5 samples there at least. And then this one. Right, so we've got these 4 samples here, and I see we've got a 5th sample, so we can just choose which one is the one we want to choose. So let's just quickly have a listen to them all. Okay, I'm not going to use this last one. It seems a bit loud. So let's line these samples up here properly. Oops. Okay, that's lined up. That's lined up. It's lined up. And you can see now it's snapping nicely to grid. I'm going to just change the length of these so that it's coming just before the end of that sample. So this is going to be our sample length here. And let me change these because these are the round robins. So I want to change the descriptions here. So that's round robin 1. This will be round robin 2. And then this will be round robin 3. Okay. Okay, so if I go to my markers library, my little markers library page here, and I click on export, so there's the export markers. I'll just expand this here. You'll see here are my 4 samples. That's great. We've got our first 4 samples. That's so cool. Now, where this process comes in and becomes a bit simpler now is I can just take this whole batch, copy it over to here. So I don't have to do each individual sample. I can now move a bit quicker at this point, and I can line them up manually here with the grid, which is excellent. Let's expand this a bit. Okay. Now these are a completely different note, so we need to label them. First, let's just find the note. I think it's going to be too soft to read the note, but let's try. Yeah. Too soft to read the note on this thing. But there's another way, and I can just use fab filters. There's a lower one here, higher one. So I think this is A4. Let me just label it A4. Now this is where Cubase starts really showing its colors, and this is why I love working with Cubase. If I go to Project, and I go Project Logical Editor, I'm going to set something cool up on this. And I'm going to automate the renaming of all of this. I can totally do them by hand. I can change D3 to A4 in this, but I'm going to automate it because, you know, I can. So we're going to put in some event target filters here. We're going to say media type is equal to marker. So we're talking about markers. Going to insert another filter here, and we're going to say property is set to selected. So now what we're saying is if a marker is selected, and then we want to rename it. So we're going to go name, replace search string, and in this case I'm going to replace D3 with a 4. Okay, and I've got that selected. Just make sure I've got just those selected. Great. So I've changed that. So now these have been labeled a 4. Let's have a look at our markers. Yep, there we go. We can just filter the description here and test the samples. Great, fantastic. So we can move on from here again and push to the next sample, which is possibly that. Yeah. So line it up there. And this sample looks broken here. What is that little click or something? Yeah, we don't want that. I'm just going to mute that for fun. And then that's going to line up here with the grid. If I'd recorded to click, this would be a much quicker process where it would snap to a much bigger grid. You'll see as I'm going through this, I'm noticing that sometimes these are too long or too short. I'm just adjusting them as I go. So this one here looks slightly misaligned. So let me zoom in, and I'm just going to change the position of this a little bit, just to there. So it's a little bit, whoop. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Just a little bit. Okay, so that's velocity layer 1. That then now brings me to my global marker. This marker is literally just to help me know what's going on. So I'm calling this hand sus VL1, VL0. So that's just a broad stroke identifier to show me exactly what's going on. This will now be VL1. Okay, so the first velocity layer generally is a little bit more work because you have to label each one very carefully and identify each one very carefully. As soon as you get to layer 2, then things become a little simpler. You just duplicate layer 1 like that. We go to our friend, the Project Logical Editor again. And what we want to do is change VL 0 to VL1 globally. So very simple. Go VL0, change that to VL1. Boom. So now we have an entirely new set of location markers already labeled. We just need to line them up, which is easy. So let me just move this aside because there's always something new to learn here. So I'm going to move this aside a little bit and start lining them up. You'll see also these samples are a bit louder, so I was clearly going at it a little bit more. Okay, let's just line this up here, there, and there. What is this? Okay, cool. Just going to bring my maximum down again. I don't want to get too loud, too hectic. So samples seem to have settled a bit. And I know that I'm coming to my next track here. There's something that's happened at this point, I think. Yeah, oh, that sounds bad. I think something fell over at that stage. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Pull that across to there. So I can go ahead and silence all of this. I don't need that anymore. Go to there. Don't need that anymore. So let's go ahead and quantize this. I'm going to make sure this is set to group editing. I'm going to double click. I'm going to remove all the hit points. And then I'm going to create a whole batch of new hit points for this. There we go. Hit points created. My samples are a little louder, and so you can see it's doing a little bit of a better job. But if I zoom in, you can see it's giving me 2, it's giving me a whole bunch of hit points there. Clearly, we don't want that. So see what my threshold is doing. I can pull my threshold a bit up a bit. Just let's pull the intensity up a bit. Let's see, these are my hit points. You know what? Bring threshold down. And this is doing a pretty good job finding my hit points. I like what I'm seeing here. So that's cool. So there's all my hit points. I don't think there's any missing, which is wonderful. Okay, let's go engage that again. And we go to the Quantize panel, make sure that's set to 100. Let's slice that up. And then we're going to quantize this to 1/8. And then we can start laying down the next 4 here. And I think that's it for the hand sus. So I do hear a couple of other articulations going down. So there we go. If we look at our list here, these are all our beautiful samples. I'm so excited to get into those, get into that export. I want to have a look here what's going on here now. It's like a little flam. I'm going to leave the flams out for now. I don't think they're going to be very useful. So I'm going to create another articulation here. I'm going to call this rumble, just for, not too sure what to call it for now. And it's only going to have one articulation. Okay, so this is going to be just its own little thing. I will cut the samples a little bit wildly, probably. Let's just put in an export marker here. And label it and call it trim, right? Underscore, this is D3, I think. We're going to keep it as a velocity 0 and an RR 0. So I'm going to put the grid off in this case. I'm going to line this up here. It's a start of little tremolo thing. Okay, let's do it to there. This will pull out to there. Next. Great, so that brings us to the end of our sample editing. It's not entirely finished because we may want to do some tuning, which sometimes we'll do it in the session, sometimes within Cubase. We obviously still need to export, and we'll leave that for another time. But for now, we've got, let me just get all my sample markers. These are all my samples over here. This basically is what our export is going to be, and I'm super stoked with what we have so far. Okay, humans, so that is the end of part 1, the sample editing. And this is a small instrument, so that's gone pretty quickly, but a bigger instrument where you've got thousands of samples, that will take a really long time. For now, we've got what we need. We've got all our export cycle markers here, so that's what we're going to use to export, and it's going to make life quite easy for us later on. Cool, so that's great. That's end of part 1. Join me for part 2. We will be dealing with sample exports, maybe delve into some Kontakt stuff. We'll see how we go. There's some detail with the exports that's worth knowing and worth checking out. So yeah, see you in the next one. Cheers.